Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And salam sejahtera. Okay. This week lecture is a little bit different with the previous one, whereby we gonna discuss the subject matter in the non-synchronous manner. So it's a little different. So obviously we have two kind of teaching and learning during online learning. We have one is synchronous, whereby the lecture will be delivered in the real life time, and another one is non-synchronous. So non-synchronous like what we are doing right now, whereby the lecturer will make a record video, a kind of video, and then upload to the in the uh, uh, medium learning, for example like author, right? So we have to be flexible so during this online teaching and learning. So okay, without further ado, so I would like to discuss with you the chapter 2 NT. So this week lecture we will discover two chapters, chapter 2 and 3, right? So I hope that you can focus on because the video have been recorded already, right? If you have a questions about this week lecture, you can raise up questions next week. Uh, so at the end of this lecture, I will give you a set of questions whereby you can uh, you have to answer as a proof of attendance. As a proof of attendance. So failure to answer the questions, right, means that you don't actually watch my video and you don't attend my class. Okay, simply like that. Okay. Right. So this is as usual learning outcome of this lecture, right? So at the end of these lessons, so we hope that students are able to explain the first sources of the Malaysian law, i.e. the written law. So uh, this week lecture, we are going only to touch, right, on the one of the sources of Malaysian law, that is the written law. So the written law, right, the written law is the written laws are like federal constitutions, one, secondly state constitutions, the third one is legislations, and the last is subsidiary legislation. So these four types of written laws that you have to focus on during this week's lecture, right? Right. So apparently we have another sources of law, there is unwritten law and Islamic law. So this will be covered in the next lecture. Okay, in the next lecture. So for this week lecture, only written law. So make sure that you are focused. Right. So what is written law? So I know when you first come across this term, you might you know uh, view that the written law is only a kind of law that is written, something like that, but it's not actually. So definition of written laws are those laws which are passed by the parliament and the authority which are authorized to enact laws. So written law doesn't mean that the law is simply written. The law must go through the process of parliament, right, which we will discuss later on, right? Or either by parliament or by the authority which are authorized to enact law. So, meaning to say, those laws that are passed by the parliament and those laws that are passed by the a body which are authorized to enact the law are called written laws. All right. So, what kind of law that being passed by the parliament? Okay. So, the law that enacted by the parliament, such as statute, act, or legislations. Okay. So statute, act, and legislation are actually synonymous. They are actually under one roof, right? So when talking about statute, they also act. When talking about legislation, also called as an act, right? Apart from statute and legislations and act, and also act, we have also another bunch of kind of laws which are enacted by a other body, which is we call as delegated laws. So this law also a kind of law, a written law, right? Which is example like subsidiary legislation in the form of regulations, bylaws, and etc. So this we will discuss this. Okay. So sorry. So we will discuss this in the last what you call it type of written laws, which is a subsidiary legislation. Okay. Right. Okay. Right. First type of written law is federal constitutions. So before we discuss the federal constitutions, so we have to understand what is the constitution itself. Right. Okay. The constitution is actually a body of legal and non-legal rules concerning the government of a state. So if you go to any part of a state in the world, most of them have their own constitutions. So when talking about constitutions, normally they are written. Normally they are written unless there are some part of the countries in the world that whereby their constitutions are not written. For example, like in the UK, obviously the constitution is not written, right? They don't have what you call that a proper written document of constitutions. But in the US and Malaysia, we have a written documents. We have a written document stating our principles of the country, right? So second definition of constitution is a written document having special legal status which establish the state and set up the structure and powers of the state. Okay, it's a written document. So firstly, you must remember that constitution is a written document having a special legal status. It must be have a legal status which establishes the state and set out the structure and powers of the state, right? So the first definition is quite general, but the second is more specific. More specific. So according to the second definitions, right? A constitution must be in a written form, right? So well, it depends. Some countries might have their constitution which is we are not written, but ours, as far as Malaysia is concerned, we have a written constitution, which is called a federal constitution. Okay. The third one is the constitution must be the supreme law of the land. Okay. So when talking about constitutions in any part of the country in this world, right? It must be the highest law of that country, right? You cannot say that we have constitutions, but if we have another law which is higher than constitution, eh? So in a it's a weird when you say that constitution and yet it is below another laws, so normally when talking about constitution it must be the highest law of the land. So these are the characteristics of the constitutions. Okay, so as far as the our constitutions, Malaysia is concerned, we have